My name is James McManus. I'm a social studies education major at the Citadel. And I, last spring, got the great opportunity to go to Oxford University and study for a semester. So first of all, I do go to the Citadel. It does look like a castle, which is pretty cool. That's also some more pictures. So there you go. So removing the mystique a little bit. We are normal people, even though we do wear uniforms. So I got to go all over the country. I'm half English. I had a lot of friends and family across the country. And I was able to go and visit in schools. Basically just sent letters out to schools blind with my resume attached saying, please let me come observe in your school. For some strange reason they let me, so I got to go to a bunch of different schools. The first one was St. Nicholas Primary School in Oxford, just outside of Oxford. Rowledge Primary in Rowledge, sort of west of London. The Priory School, which is south of London in Dorking. St. John's School, which is a private school. I think it was the only private school I went to in England. And Penland Primary, well, we call it private. I'll get to that later. Penland Primary in Billingham, which was a failing school that has been turned around, which is a really cool experience. And Moorside Junior School. And I'll explain what sort of all their suffixes mean and things like that. But first of all, I'm just going to go through each school. I picked two different characteristics that I really liked about the way that they did their schooling. So first was St. Nicholas Primary. They had some really cool behavior skills. I'm an education major. I'm a bit of an education nerd. So I thought it was really cool, very geeky. But they students all start at yellow during the day, and if they do well, they go to green. And if they do poorly, they go to red. And these kids would freak out if they went to red. There was also the Communications Integration Resource Base, which was a self-contained unit specifically for kids with autism, severe autism, ADHD, things like that. And that's actually where I spent my day. It was a really, really fascinating place, and those people are saints who work there. They have the patience of, I don't know, deities or something, but they are spectacular people. Rowledge Primary. Small, little rural school. They have one class per grade or per year, as I'll get to that later too. But they're great. They're way above where I imagined they would be. They've got young governors, they call them, so they're like the sort of student body presidents, and they show me around the school. They also do computer skills in first grade that blew my mind. I mean, Control-C, Control-V, and they were all like chanting it, and they were building roller coasters on a computer. I still have no idea how they did it, but it was really cool. There was also something that's interesting, especially now in the US, there's a big pushback about students and going on overnight trips and things like that. And this school actually sends, every single year, they send their kids on an overnight trip. And there's some really funny pictures of these first graders like sleeping in school. They stayed overnight at school one night, and then so they had they watched a movie like Finding Nemo or something like that, and then it was really cool. But fifth grade, which I translated this into grades, so it's a little bit easier. But in fifth grade, they actually go after their big standardized test they have to take, and they go out for a whole week, like a few days. So that was kind of cool, neat experience. The Priory School, they have some really neat ideas for students. So they have golden tickets. So if the teacher gets one golden ticket a week, I think it is, and they can give their student a golden ticket if they do something really well or their work is very good. All those golden tickets go into a big bucket at the end of the week or the end of the month. They pull them out, and then the winner gets prizes. Like an iPod, like not just like, oh, here's an eraser and a pencil. Like, I mean, crazy good prizes. They also had silver tickets where students would give them to their teachers. So that was a really cool, neat idea. This was a religious-based school. It was a Church of England school. And so they had a really, really great community, very good family ethos. It definitely felt like a great community. St. John's School, which my cousins go to school there, and it was pretty cool. They have 9 different houses. Each one has a house master, which a lot of my Citadel peeps will know. It's very related to companies, sort of a tax. And they also had a JROTC type program, which is pretty neat. And they have a massive sports program. And they are co-ed too, but everybody was required to participate in a sport. Everybody was required to participate in Combined Cadet Force, CCF, or like JROTC. So it was a really, really neat program. Penland Primary, another really great, this was the failing school that had been turned around. They're doing a really good job. The progress wheel was, again, something I was geeking out about. These kids had laminated circles, and they could write the number in each quadrant of, before, during, and after the lesson, and then they could judge how well they learned the material, which was kind of cool. And the nurture bases too. This is a very difficult area, and they had kids who very, very troubled, very difficult home lives. And you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you have a terrible home life, there's no way on earth you're going to learn, how to multiply. It just doesn't work. So they did a really great job teaching life skills, things like that. I was able to go in there for a whole day. It was really cool. Moorside Junior School, they did a lot of SATs preparation. It's SATs, not SATs. And then they also had red and yellow card system as in soccer. So they had little soccer cutouts, and then they put red and yellow cards in it. It was cool. And then the ball, they had a soccer ball at their feet of the person they decorated, and it had all their goals on it for the year. So it was kind of cool. Okay, so I basically took all of these different things and condensed a couple of themes that I found across the board of things that were traditional in British education. First thing is years versus grades. So you've got pretty simple, you think. So you've got the age that they enter the grade, the UK year, and then the US grade, what we consider grades. And we found out after a while it's -1. So if you're going, or +1. So if you're going from the US grade, you add 1 to the UK year. And if you're going back vice versa, you -1. It's because they don't have kindergarten, they have year 1. So they're kindergartners. But they just make it even more confusing by adding these two things. This is forms. That has something to do with an old system that was sort of left over from British education from the 1870s up until about the 1980s. And it's still in place today. Don't ask me how it works. I'll show you that in a second. And then key stages. So these are broken down into basically how kids learn best. So they break in key stage 1, key stage 2, et cetera, et cetera. So you think that's really easy to figure out. Let me show you what it looks like. Oh, well, hold on. Okay, so it serves really no purpose other than to completely and utterly confuse anybody trying to understand the system. And it's used to be completely different, like I said, but it's changed from the 1980s to today. So ages, they are required to go to school from 5 to 18. They just changed it to 18 now, so as of 2015 actually. So it is now compulsory. They have different types of schools. So you can have, you got elementary school, middle school, high school here. It doesn't work there. They've got infant schools, primary schools, junior schools, senior schools, and secondary schools. And I'll show you what it means in a second. And then they have forms, so 1st through 5th form, and they also have key stages. And that's sort of true sometimes, because they also have other things. But this is sort of what I used there. Yes. So you can kind of see, I don't know, does this do a laser? Oh, I have a laser. Okay. So you can see, so these are different configurations of schools you could have. If you have, these are forms, so if you have a state school, generally it's that. Private schools, generally it's this. Lower 5th, upper 5th, lower 6th, upper 6th. It is absolutely unfathomable if you've not spent a whole year studying it, and even I still don't get it. And so these are, I also put down some major tests here, and then the key stages here. And then so, you get 3 years of university, it's the normal there, and so a whole bunch of other things. And I'll get to the tests and things later as well. So houses, very important to know. This is very integral into the British education system. They have school houses. They get points for asking questions. They have a field day oftentimes throughout the year where they'll all go out into and participate in their school color or their house color. And they can actually be houses or dorms if they're a boarding school, particularly. So this is an example. These are some of the St. John's School, which is an independent school, which is a private school here. It's an independent school. And then these two are public or state schools, they're called in the UK. And so you can tell kind of here, there's colors that each one wears. And then you can tell here there's red, green, yellow, and blue, and then red, green, yellow, and blue. Sometimes they'll name them something different, or they'll name them after alumni. But does that sound familiar to anybody by any chance? The red, yellow, green, blue thing? Yeah. And so let's just look for a minute, just for fun, at some of the comparisons here. So 4 houses, right? Obviously, there's a point system. I know when what's the lady who plays Hermione Granger? Emma Watson. I was like, I know this was Emma, but I can't remember. So when she went to Brown University, apparently somebody said she answered a question right, and somebody in the back of the lecture hall yelled, 10 points for Gryffindor, and she ran out crying, but which I don't blame her. But if you look here, the point system, so you lose points for bad behavior, you gain them for answering good questions. Same thing as in a normal British school. But the other thing too is that like I said here, these ones are named after alumni and cardinal directions, but mainly alumni, and these ones are named after colors. So, named after famous founders, alumni, get it? So you can kind of see it's not out there. It's not, she didn't just come up with this whole world by herself. Uniforms, this is very important as well for British schools. So that you don't wear robes unless you're at Oxbridge, which is Oxford or Cambridge, in which case you do wear robes every once in a while. There could be, it's either a strict dress code or it could be actual uniform items that you purchase. So here, just an example, here's one of the primary schools. You got blue sweatshirts for the years 5 through 6, so you can tell that they're upperclassmen, and then a red sweatshirt for years K through 4. So I'll show you what that looks like a little bit. They also have PE kit, as in uniform. But here's well, okay. I'll show you pictures in a second. I spoke to a sociology class of seniors and asked them, they didn't have to wear uniforms. They were allowed to wear civilian clothes, normal clothes. And I asked them whether or not, what some pros and cons were. It was great. The teacher gave me a whole class period. So the pros, it's easy, structure is great, consistency is good, and it evens the playing field. But the bad things is that they try and rebel in any way, shape, or form. They try and have, short ties. The kids walking around with ties this long. Well, what the heck are they doing? Don't even ask. We don't know. But they're also not treated as individuals. They feel that sometimes it's uncomfortable or cold, and they can be expensive. And one of the head teachers I talked to said it's a constant battle to get them to wear it properly. Boys tend to be more concerned about the lack of individuality. Either that or they were so lazy because they didn't want to have to get up and put the whole uniform on, they just want to put on whatever. And the girls like the ease and the structure because it's easy. You know exactly what you're going to wear every day, you don't have to worry about it, but they didn't like the cost or the discomfort. Okay, I polled the class, school uniforms or normal clothes. How many of you think that they voted for school uniforms? They would rather wear school uniforms than normal clothes. Okay, how many of you think the opposite? How many of you say they wanted to wear normal clothes? I'd like to point out there's a majority of guys who said normal clothes and a majority of girls who said uniforms. That was the breakdown. Guess which side said what? So it's the exact same thing. And it's funny because I would have thought it was the complete opposite. I would have thought the guys were like, oh, I'll wear a uniform. And the girls going, I don't want to wear a uniform. It's ugly. But I guess not. So that was pretty interesting. Here's some pictures. This is what I was talking about, the red sweatshirts and the blue sweatshirts. And then some different examples here. And then this is an example of the PE kit that they would wear while on the athletics field. And these are some examples of the independent school uniforms. So you got the lovely tie and the blazer and the shoes that have been shined. And then we've got these two lovely ladies over here. And yes, they do have names. These three here are my cousins. And then these two are my godfather's kids. So they're very good kids. They were happy enough to pose while I took a picture of them. Or their parents took a picture of them, actually. So there we go. So the other thing that I saw that was really neat is the treatment of teachers. So teachers are obviously called sir or miss all the time. And even by each other, which is kind of neat. And the other thing is that there's a lot of teaching to the test and tracking. So there's a lot of paperwork that the teachers have to do, which is kind of sad. And there's also two main teacher unions, which I thought was kind of worth mentioning. When I was observing one day, the National Union of Teachers, or NUT, which I think is funny, was striking one day, and many of the teachers just ignored it. This was the school that had a really good family ethos, and there were a lot of NUT teachers who were just like, oh, I'm not going to strike, there's no point. So it was very interesting. It's a completely different dynamic than here, and the fact that they could strike, it in fact did shut down some schools in the UK too. Testing. This is really huge. And these 2 times they have standardized tests called SATs. They have the GCSEs and they also have A-levels, which is here you can see here. I'll explain that in a second. But basically the problem with these is that the GCSEs, well, the SATs determine what high school you can go to a lot of times. And GCSEs, they can determine what classes you can take in the end of high school. And then those classes then determine what your college career is going to be like. So it's actually, I think it's awful because you're ending up, when you're 10 years old, you're basically saying, oh, I'm going to go to this college. That's basically, and if you fail that certain thing, you can't go to the right school, you can't get the right grades, and then 1 D grade on this will absolutely ruin a child's future. And that was actually told to me by an English teacher himself. He's like, a 1 D will ruin their future. So it's kind of sad. So I'd like to also point something out for Harry Potter again. GCSEs used to be called O-levels. That was actually when my mom was in school, that's what they're called. And then Harry Potter, in year 5, takes the ordinary wizarding level exams. Yes, there are a lot of similarities. And then there's also these, A-levels, or the Newts, as they are known in Harry Potter, which are taken in the end of year 7, the end of their school career. And again, like I said, they're nastily exhausting, so they're terrible. The problem with this overall, and I can send this to anybody who would like to look at it, but it focuses on the kids. The funding is determined based on how many kids get 5 A-star to C grades on their GCSEs. They get the school gets incentives and funding and things like that. The problem is that they're not going to focus on the kid who has several grades below the limit. They're going to focus on the kid who has 1 grade who can get that up, so their number says this kid got 5 A to C grades. So it's kind of sad. You end up focusing on the kids who are right on the cusp instead of the kids who really need the help all the way at the bottom. So inclusion, years versus houses, schoolhouses, uniforms, treatment of teachers is pretty good. Terrible testing, they're awful, and they focus a lot on the swing students. And Harry Potter is actually real. So there you go. So thank you very much.
This is an educational question. So how would you, what things from the British system would you like to use in your teaching here, or are you and teaching English?
I actually got offered a couple of jobs, sort of, and I didn't even teach any, so I was just observing. But there's a couple of things. A lot of those things in the schools that I saw, specifically the case studies, a lot of those things I would love to implement. Specifically the wheel of the progress wheel, so the kids write down, they can self-determine how they're perceiving the material. And then overall, system-wide, I really like uniforms. I hate to say it, but going to a school that has uniforms, it really is a great equalizer. You don't have to think about what you're going to wear when you get up in the morning. So that would be good, I think, system-wide. So those are 2 kind of little things, one personally, one system. So.
Do you know much about kind of like private schools in the United States, boarding schools, i.e. Andover, Exeter, etc.?
A little bit. I actually observed in a private school here. I'm going to a boarding school later this year.
Okay, well, the follow-up question was, how do they kind of compare? Because I know a lot of the private schools here, private boarding schools, particularly in New England, Detroit, Rosemary Hall, Exeter, Andover, kind of the more popular ones, definitely follow kind of like a similar type of tradition.
And you notice that a lot of them are in the New England area. And this can go back to a whole sort of historical background of how education in the United States developed. But mainly, they had a huge influx of English culture. And so that really helps determine everything up north. So that's specifically why they're more tied to the old British school systems. And also, there was a time in the 1800s specifically when they were trying to emulate the higher level education, the world-class education. And so the British had a world-class education system at the time, especially for private school. So they decided, okay, well, if they're doing it like that, let's do it like that.